One of the most important things to remember is that you is kind, you is smart, and you is important. This is the iconic phrase stated over and over in the movie The Help. Written and directed by Tate Taylor and produced by Chris Columbus, Brunson Green, Michael Barnathan, and Sonia Lunsford, The Help is a great movie about overcoming adversity and speaking up for yourself. It's back to the 1960s in Jacksonville, Mississippi, with the music, dresses, and racial segregation. Skeeter is a college graduate who aspires to become a journalist. She starts out writing an advice column about cleaning for her local newspaper. Since she doesn't know very much about cleaning, she asks if she can talk to her friend's maid Abeline for advice. After spending time with Abeline, she begins to see how she is being mistreated by the whites. This gives Skeeter the idea to write a book about the Help's perspective on their jobs. This is a dangerous thing to do because if the maids' employers find out that they're participating in this, they can get in a lot of trouble. Also, doing something like this back then was illegal. At first, The Help isn't inclined to participate in Skeeter's idea, but after one of Abeline's friends is wrongly arrested, all the housemaids band together to tell Skeeter their stories. In the movie The Help, there are 5 main characters. The first one is Abeline. Abeline is respectful to her boss, Elizabeth, and she takes care of her child, May Mobley. She recognizes that she is in the lower class and she must do what she is told, even if she doesn't agree. The second main character is Skeeter. As I said before, Skeeter is a college grad who aspires to become a journalist. She is an independent girl who doesn't really get along with the other girls. She starts out writing for the Jackson Journal, but then progresses to write a best-selling novel. The third main character is Hilly. Hilly is the meanest person. She has the biggest ego and the lowest regard for the Help. She is one of the wealthier people in the story. She's also married to a politician. She loves the idea of segregation and punishes anyone who disagrees. She establishes her control through blackmail and threats, but by the end of the movie, she loses her power. The fourth main character is Celia Foote. Celia is the sweetest girl and has the purest heart. She's very nice and respectful to the Help and gives them the same privileges that she has. She tries to be nice to the other girls as well, but they hate her. The fifth main character is Minnie. Minnie is a Help just like Abeline. However, she has a lot more spunk. She pushes her limits with her employers, but still knows that there's a line. Minnie and Abeline are the first to speak out to Skeeter about their troubles as the Help. Throughout the movie The Help, there are many servant speaker concepts. The first one is speaking up for others. This is shown when Skeeter wants to speak up for the Help. The second is speaking in multicultural communities. This is shown in the difference of opinions between the whites and the maids. The third is logos, ethos, and pathos. Destructive fear, excessive ego, and vertical and horizontal listening. My group mates will explain each of these more in depth.
The Help was full of great examples of speaking up for others. This movie as a whole revolved around speaking up for those who were being degraded because of their skin color. Skeeter, in particular, was an excellent example of a servant speaker who spoke up for others. She seen that these African American women, the Help, were being treated unfairly. In order to change this, she decided to write a book, informing the public of the injustices that these women faced. She did this by using true stories from the Help in order to expose this unfair and hurtful treatment. Skeeter further proved herself as a wonderful servant speaker because she pretty much stood alone in her efforts to conquer this racial divide. Her efforts were criticized by many, including her friends Hilly Holbrook and Elizabeth Leafold, her love interest Stuart, and even her own mother. However, this didn't discourage Skeeter. She kept fighting for what was right. She realized that in this case, silence was a sin, and that she couldn't just be another silent witness of evil deeds. She needed to speak out for those who were unable to speak out for themselves. It is clear that this movie involves multicultural communities. We see a strong racial divide, and blacks were treated unfairly because of their skin color. In many households in this movie, the buzz was to make sure that the African American women working in the household did not use the same bathroom as the rest of the white family. These women worked for almost nothing, They cooked the meals, cleaned the house, and practically raised the children. Yet they weren't allowed to use the same bathroom as the rest of the white family. In this case, multicultural communities were harmful. These people couldn't accept diversity. They seen blacks as inferior. This is why Skeeter felt the need to speak out. However, these communities are not always harmful. There can be wonderful, diverse communities if we just learn to accept people for who they are and not by the color of their skin. Yet, this movie didn't show multicultural communities as a good thing. People were being treated unfairly. This should teach us that this is not how multicultural communities should be. But we, like Skeeter, must reach out to those who are of a different race. One thing that I believe that this movie did well was showing that there is good and evil on both sides of the racial spectrum. It was clear that Hilly Holbrook was sinful and prideful in the way that she treated the help. This movie also showed that there was evil on the other side of the story when we see that Minnie's husband beat her and abused her badly. There was also good on both sides with Skeeter, Minnie, and Abilene. This movie portrayed well that we are all sinners, and both sides of the story contain some evil. This is good for us to see, as it is easy for us to place judgment on one group and not the other, but we need to remember that there is both good and evil on both sides. Logos is the appeal to logic and the mind. It persuades the audience by reason. This movie, The Help, definitely appeals to the audience's mind. When we hear these stories from the working women and see some of these stories in action, it really gets you thinking about the racial divides and how difficult it must have been to conquer those divides back then. Ethos is the appeal to ethics, and it is a way of convincing the audience that the speaker has credibility and character. Skeeter's credibility and character were shown time and time again. First, when she refused to put Hilly's bill about bathroom segregation in the newsletter. And then how she desired to hear the truth from the help and speak out so that others could hear this truth as well. Again, her kindness was shown when we see her love for Constantine, her childhood mate. And simply the way in which she continually stood up for the help showed Skeeter's credibility as a kind and loving person. Lastly, pathos is the appeal to the emotions. This movie, for me at least, was definitely a tearjerker. Some examples of this would include Abilene telling of her son's tragic death, Constantine's sad story and how Skeeter remembered her, or when Abilene had to leave little May because May's mother had just fired Abilene, or just the overall mistreatment of the help really saddened me. The thing that stood out to me the most in this movie was what Abilene would say to little May. You was smart, you was kind, and you was important. This stuck with me emotionally because I realized that this was the kindness of Abilene trying to influence the next generation to be different, to be better. Abilene's words can be a good reminder for us as well.
In the movie The Help, the next servant speaker concept that I would like to talk about is destructive fear. We see this over and over in the movie, but I'd like to define what destructive fear is. According to the Oxford Dictionary, destructive is causing great and irreparable damage, and fear is an emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. We see this fear that began to build in people turned into something very destructive in the movie. It was something that constantly drove the motivating factors and drove people to do and say the things that they said. It was something that never ever was satisfied in the movie as well. It was something that continued to consume every single person. And the only thing that it did was continue to bring separation between the different races. And it was very destructive in the way that people chose to deal with this fear. Destructive fear never ever will solve any problems, as we see in the movie The Help. The only thing that it will continue to do is divide people and to conquer them. Hilly Holbrook is a perfect example in the movie of someone that was totally consumed by destructive fear. She was consumed in thinking that blacks could possibly cause some disease or any other thing by using the same toilets as whites. And so she was so consumed with this that she decided that she had to try and do something about this. And so she decided that she would spread her fear among all the other people in the movie. And so much so that she even tried to get laws passed so that blacks couldn't use the same toilets as whites. But we see that it didn't end here. We also see that there's a lot of people that had excessive egos. And it's people that are focused on who they are socially, that they are thinking that they are someone special because of their position or their family or their husbands. And they're constantly putting themselves in front of and thinking of themselves first and not thinking of anybody else. And they're thinking that they are constantly better because of nothing more than their skin or where they are from. And in Philippians 2:3, we see that it says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility count others as better and more significant than yourselves." And Minnie Jackson felt this excessive ego as well in the movie. Minnie Jackson was one of the help, and she constantly felt others beating her down because of nothing more than the color of her skin. And so Minnie was actually the help for Hilly Holbrook here. And Minnie was fired for using the same toilets as Hilly. It was a white-only toilet. So Minnie decided to take things in her own hand and try and bring this excessive ego of Hilly down. And so she made a pie made with her own excrement. And she fed it to Hilly. And this is one of the things that caused the book that they produced in the movie, caused the health safety in the book of the movie, is they knew that the excessive ego of Hilly here would never let anybody know that this happened here, because then somebody could possibly think that she ate excrement from Minnie. But we see that in the movie, the servant speaker concepts didn't end there. The next thing I would like to talk about is vertical and horizontal listening. Vertical and horizontal listening has to do with vertically listening to God and horizontally listening to others. Vertical and horizontal listening was not done a whole lot in this movie, but I could think of one example where Skeeter was listening to the help, but she never spoke, or when she spoke, she asked clarifying questions. She never tried to defend anybody or tell them that what they were thinking was wrong. She just chose to listen and to think about what they were saying and just to write it down. And this proves that she was not focused on herself, but she was focused on others. And that's part of vertical and horizontal listening. But as we go on to vertical listening, one thing that I noticed is it wasn't done much in the movie. You don't see many people listening to what God has to say. And I kind of wonder what this movie would have been like if people would have been focused more on vertical and horizontal listening instead of on destructive fear and their own ego.
Roommates explained, The Help is more than just a good movie. It shows many aspects of speaking up for yourself and keeping a level head even in the hardest circumstances. Throughout the movie, the most prominent servant speaker concepts were speaking up for others, speaking in multicultural communities, logos, ethos, and pathos, destructive fear, excessive ego, and vertical and horizontal listening. The movie wraps up with Evelyn losing her job, Skeeter getting her job as a journalist in New York, and her book, The Help, becoming a huge success. The Help is a movie that teaches many important life lessons, but the most important is to always remember that you is kind, you is smart, and you is important.